Hey, this is Seth with Start Camping, and today we're talking tents. In a minute. This sleeping bag's still calling my name. Okay, we're talking about tents. And just like any real estate deal, the important thing with tents is location, location, location. Now, this is a pretty typical campsite. We've got a tent pad here, we've got a fire ring there, we've got a hook for the trash, we've got all this nice, beautiful woods back behind us. A lot of times with these tent pads, they're a little bit closer to the fire ring than I would like personally. My tent and most tents out there are nylon, which is plastic. If it gets hot at all, it's going to melt. So you can use the tent pad, move your tent all the way back to the end of it, or you can find a place out here, preferably one that doesn't have a lot of vegetation, doesn't have a lot of roots underneath it, anything like that. You can find a close by area that it's clear where other people have been tenting before, and use that. I find the ground to be a little bit softer, a little bit nicer than these tent pads, but the tent pads are just fine. That's in fact what they're here for. Alright, so we're here on the tent pad. I've got my tent. This is Alps Mountaineering Merrimack 2. Now this is a two-person tent. Be aware that a lot of times a two-person tent means a one-person tent. This particular tent, I've shared it with my son, I've shared it with my wife, and we were just fine. Be aware that typically with a two-person tent, you're going to be pretty darn close to the person you're sharing it with. So, if it's a buddy, you may want a three-person tent to give yourselves a little bit of room. So we're going to go ahead and get this started, get this set up, and the first thing that you need is your ground cloth. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and start with our ground cloth here. Now, when I first started camping, as an adult, again, I didn't have a ground cloth. I didn't bother with a ground cloth. Figured I didn't need one. Well, it's always a good idea to have a ground cloth for a few reasons. One, it's another layer between you and the ground. It'll help dampen some of the rocks that you may have missed or roots sticking up that you may have missed. More importantly, it keeps the bottom of your tent off the ground, so it's clean and dry. Two things that you're going to find are very important out here. So this particular ground cloth came with the tent. It's just the right size. It's perfect. It's not very thick. It's not a real thick one. You can use a tarp just as easily. For my other tents, I use tarps because I don't have the ground cloth from the manufacturer. But this works great. Okay, we've got the ground cloth laid out here, and now the fun begins. So we're going to dive into our tent bag here. This is the rain fly. You don't need this yet. You want to go ahead and set it aside where it's going to be clean. Don't just toss it in the dirt. And we've got our tent poles here. Now a lot of times these will be wrapped up inside the body of your tent. Mine were already out because I carried them separately in my pack. I came in here about a mile, so I had to pack it in. If you're car camping, you just end up rolling it up in your tent, and that works just fine. So what we're going to do is we're going to lay out the body of the tent, put the poles up, and I'm not going to make you watch me do all this in regular time, so we'll just make it quick. Ta-da! There it goes. Don't you love the magic of video editing? So now you've got your tent. I really love to sleep with the top down. You got nice air coming in, you get the smells and the sounds, and you get to see the stars so much clearer than with the rain fly on. However, there are many times when you do need the rain fly. If you're with a big group and you're concerned about privacy, put on your rain fly. If you're worried about a heavy dew or a light rain, put on your rain fly. Obviously, if you're worried about a storm coming through, definitely put on your rain fly. So again, show you how this goes on real quick. It's not rocket science. Basically, you're just throwing something over it. And now we have a rain fly. So this rain fly has a pole down the middle to leave a little bit of overlap here so the rain isn't directly on the door of the tent. Most tents have something like this. Some tents have a full vestibule, which is pretty cool, but it's a lot of cloth and it makes for a much heavier tent. So just be aware. The most important thing when you're setting up a tent is make sure that you know how to do it before you get to your campsite. Set up your tent at home. Make sure that you've got all the parts. Make sure that you know how it gets together. Because once you get out here, if you're missing anything, you're going to have to make it. If you don't know how to put it together, it's going to take a long time and it's going to be frustrating when you just want to get out here and relax. So put it together a couple times, 2 or 3 times at home before you bring it out, and you'll be good to go. Especially the tents are getting easier. Very few of them are very confusing, so just go ahead and put it together a few times. You're good to go. One thing I have not gone over and will not go over in this video is tent stakes. I don't typically use tent stakes. I find that once I put my stuff in my tent, sleeping bag, sleeping pad, my pack, if I'm by myself, hopefully, then there is plenty of weight to hold down the tent. I've had some really strong storms come through and never had a problem with my tent blowing away. All tents come with stakes. You can get some really nice stakes, separate from your tent, but I typically don't use them. That's completely up to you. On a tent pad like this, I don't even know if I'd be able to hammer them in, but I'll leave that up to you. So that's it for tents. That's the important stuff. There's a million tents out there. Find one that works for you and stick with it. There's no reason to get fancy. So this is Seth. Start camping, and come visit us at gottastartcamping.com, and happy camping.